Have you ever been afraid to trust again? Maybe not with words, but with your heart. That quiet hesitation that whispers, "What if it happens again?" Someone broke a promise. Life took a turn you never saw coming. And now, even when you want to believe, your heart builds walls before your hands can reach out. You pray, but you guard. You hope, but you prepare for disappointment. It's not that you've lost faith. It's that faith started to feel like a risk. But here's what few people tell you. Learning to trust again isn't about pretending the pain never happened. It's about letting grace touch the places you swore you'd never open again. Because God doesn't ask for perfect trust. He asks for honest trust. The kind that trembles, that doubts, that still chooses to lean on Him even with shaking hands. The kind that says, "Lord, I'm scared, but I'm here." And maybe that's what faith really looks like. Not certainty, but courage in the middle of uncertainty. There's a beauty in rebuilding your trust piece by piece, like a house that's been through the storm, but still stands because its foundation was deeper than the cracks. You may have been hurt by people, by plans, even by your own expectations, but you're still here. And that means grace is still working, because if pain had the power to destroy you, you wouldn't be watching this right now. Something stronger kept you standing. So if your heart has been waiting for a sign, this is it. It's time to believe again, slowly, gently, and without fear of breaking. Because trust doesn't begin when everything feels safe. It begins when you choose to open your hands anyway. Stay with me until the end. I'll show you how faith rebuilds itself from the ashes. And before we begin, if these messages have spoken to your soul, make sure you're subscribed. Here, we walk through real stories. Stories that hurt, heal, and bring us closer to peace. Now take a breath, and let's begin the journey of learning to trust again. It doesn't take much to shatter trust. Just one promise broken, one word left unsaid, one prayer that seemed unanswered. And suddenly something inside her shifts. She still smiles, still does what she needs to do, but deep down, something closed. The woman who once believed easily now hesitates before every step. She's learned to measure her hope, to ration her faith like it's fragile glass. Even with God, she finds herself whispering prayers with caution, afraid to expect too much. It's not anger, it's weariness. She's been faithful before and felt forgotten. She's been open before and been hurt. Pain does something strange to the soul. It doesn't just wound, it rearranges. It changes how we see everything. People, promises, even ourselves. And so she builds invisible walls, not out of pride, but protection. She convinces herself it's wisdom, maturity, strength, but really it's fear dressed up as control. Because if she can predict the pain, maybe she can prevent it. The problem is that same wall that keeps pain out also keeps love from getting in. Even prayer starts to feel like talking through glass. She can hear her own voice, but she wonders if God still hears hers. She remembers verses like Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. But that's the problem. Her heart doesn't know how to trust anymore. The word all feels too heavy. So she gives God what's safe, the surface of her prayers, not the depths of her wounds. It's easier to pretend everything's fine than to admit she's scared of being disappointed again. But even in her guardedness, there's a spark. Something in her still aches for peace, for the kind of trust that doesn't depend on guarantees. The ache itself is proof that faith isn't gone. It's just buried under the rubble, and God, in His quiet patience, doesn't rush her. He doesn't shame her for the distance or demand instant healing. He just waits, like He did with Peter after the denial, like He does with every wounded heart. He knows that real trust isn't rebuilt through force. It's grown through gentleness. And though she doesn't realize it yet, this breaking, this raw and painful unraveling, is where grace begins to seep in. Because trust doesn't break to destroy. It breaks to reveal what was never meant to hold the weight in the first place. And once it's gone, God begins to build something new. Not as it was before, but stronger, softer, truer. What's broken isn't the end. It's the beginning of rebuilding. Healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on the door or shout in the middle of the night. It comes quietly, like morning light slipping through the curtains. At first, she doesn't even notice it. The way her heart softens, the way her thoughts begin to breathe again. There's no dramatic moment, no divine thunder, just small, sacred things. The comfort of a sunrise, a verse that speaks at the right time, a friend who listens without trying to fix her. That's how God works when we think He's silent. He moves gently, beneath the noise of our doubt. Every morning she wakes up, still tired but a little less heavy. The tears don't come as often, and when they do, they feel different. Not like breaking, but like release. She begins to pray again, not because she expects miracles, but because she misses the sound of her own voice in His presence. And that's where the shift happens. Healing begins not when pain disappears, but when she starts talking to God honestly again. No filters, no fear. It's the kind of prayer that sounds more like breathing. Lord, I'm trying. I'm still scared, but I'm here. And heaven calls that enough. There's something sacred about small beginnings. In Luke 17:6, Jesus said that faith the size of a mustard seed could move mountains. Maybe that's because faith isn't measured by certainty, but by willingness. She doesn't have all the answers, but she's showing up again, and that's what matters. Each small act of trust, getting out of bed, forgiving someone, smiling again, becomes a quiet testimony. The world may not notice, but heaven does. God isn't just healing her pain. He's restoring her ability to hope. Some days she still questions everything. Some nights she still feels alone. But she's learning that faith doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means choosing to walk through it anyway. And in those quiet moments when doubt feels louder than prayer, she remembers something. Maybe God isn't silent after all. Maybe His silence was the space where her heart could finally hear again. The healing isn't loud. It's not quick or easy, but it's steady. And just like that, without even realizing when it started, she begins to trust again. Not because life got easier, but because grace met her where it hurt the most. Trust doesn't return in one day. It tiptoes back into the heart like sunlight after a storm. Slowly, gently, testing if it's safe to shine again. She doesn't even realize it at first. It starts with small things. Laughing at something silly, answering a message she would have ignored, saying yes when she used to hide behind maybe. It's subtle, but real. Each small opening becomes an act of courage. And courage, she's learning, is not the absence of fear. It's choosing love in the presence of it. God often rebuilds our trust through people. It's not always the same ones who broke it. Sometimes He sends new faces, new voices, new reasons to believe that goodness still exists. But to receive them, she has to lower the walls a little. That's the hardest part. Because every time she opens her heart, she risks being hurt again. And yet, something inside whispers, this time it's different. Because she's no longer trusting blindly. She's trusting wisely, with faith that's been refined, not destroyed. She begins to see how God has been weaving this quiet restoration all along. The people who stayed, the moments that didn't go as planned, but ended up being blessings in disguise. Even her own strength, the resilience she didn't know she had, becomes proof that her story isn't over. She's learning that trust doesn't mean expecting perfection. It means expecting grace. It means knowing that even if things fall apart again, she won't. One evening, she finds herself praying differently, not asking for control, not begging for signs, just talking. Just sharing her heart the way she used to. And she realizes that trusting God isn't about getting what she wants. It's about knowing He's good, even when she doesn't. It's about remembering that His love never betrayed her, even when life did. And somehow, that truth fills her with peace more than any guarantee ever could. By opening her heart again, she starts to live again. The world feels softer, lighter, not because it changed, but because she did. Her faith, once fragile, now has roots. It's not loud, but steady, like the heartbeat of someone who's finally stopped running. And maybe that's the miracle of it all. Trust doesn't return to erase the past, but to remind her that even broken hearts can love again. Trust isn't something she gets back. It's something she grows into. Day by day, step by step. Some mornings she wakes up full of faith. Other mornings she needs to remind herself to breathe. But even then she knows now it's okay. Because trust isn't measured by how fearless she feels. It's measured by how faithfully she keeps showing up. And showing up is sacred. Every prayer whispered, every choice to love again, every quiet moment where she decides not to run, it all counts. That's how trust takes root. Not in perfection, but in persistence. She's learning to see life differently now. Where she once saw disappointments, she now sees lessons. Where she once saw silence, she now senses presence. Every heartbreak became holy ground, the place where her faith deepened instead of dying. And with time, she realizes that God was never rebuilding her life around her pain. He was rebuilding her patience, her compassion, her strength. The woman she's becoming trusts differently, not with naive certainty, but with quiet conviction. She doesn't need to understand everything to know she's held by something greater. Her trust now looks like peace in uncertainty. It looks like forgiving before understanding. It looks like rest, even when tomorrow is unclear. And maybe that's the kind of trust God wanted her to have all along. Not the one built on perfect answers, but the one built on unshakable presence. Because real faith isn't about predicting outcomes. It's about staying close to the one who never leaves, no matter the outcome. She no longer asks, "Why me?" but "What are you teaching me?" And that small shift changes everything. Sometimes she still feels the echo of fear, but fear no longer rules her. It reminds her to reach higher. When doubt comes knocking, she doesn't panic anymore. She smiles, breathes, and prays, "Lord, I've been here before, and you've never failed me yet." That's how she knows she's healed. Not because she's fearless, but because she's faithful. And in that steady rhythm of trust, she finds freedom. So she walks forward, not perfectly, but peacefully. The road isn't smooth, but it's sacred. Every step, every scar, every surrender tells the same story. Grace was stronger. And in that truth, her heart finally rests. She doesn't just believe in God, she trusts Him again. And that in itself is a miracle. Maybe trust doesn't return with loud declarations or perfect confidence. Maybe it comes back like the tide, quietly, faithfully, never in a rush, but always on time. Because the truth is, you never stopped being loved. Even when you stopped believing, God didn't stop holding you. He was there, in the ache, in the silence, in every tear that you thought went unnoticed. And the fact that you're here now, listening, breathing, and still reaching for hope, That's proof that grace never gave up on you. To trust again doesn't mean to forget what broke you. It means to let God touch the broken places until they no longer hurt to remember. It's letting peace enter where pain used to live. It's saying, Lord, I still don't know how this story ends, but I trust that you're writing it. That's faith. Not perfect, but pure. And maybe that's all he's ever asked of you. Not certainty, just sincerity. Because every time you choose to believe again, even after being disappointed, heaven calls it courage. If this message spoke to something inside you, don't let it stop here. Take a deep breath and remind yourself, you are safe to trust again. God is not who hurt you. He's the one who will heal you. And you don't have to rush the process. Just keep walking, one honest prayer at a time. If these stories have helped you see your faith through new eyes, make sure you're subscribed. Each week we share reflections that bring peace, hope, and quiet strength. Messages that remind you that God still restores what the world tries to break. Before you leave, close your eyes for a moment and whisper this prayer. Lord, teach me to trust again. Not like before, but deeper, softer, truer. And as you say it, remember, faith that has been broken and rebuilt is stronger than faith that's never been tested. Because grace always grows best in the cracks.